Hello guys, Madoka Magica here, and we are back with the next part of my Madoka Magica's Scene0 reaction series. Now, I took a bit of time off before uploading my next reaction because I wanted to again make sure I had some notes to read, go over and stuff, and today's specific reaction is actually something I've been keenly interested in doing ever since I've seen Mabayu's design for the first time, and that is, as you can see on screen here, a bit of color theory about the character. Now, color theory really interests me as like a tool for analysis and stuff, just because I feel like there's a lot you can glean from the intent of a creator just by looking at color palette and stuff. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing tonight. We are going to be starting off this video with a bit of color theory based on some notes that I've taken and just giving you guys my breakdown of Mabayu's design from this lens of color psychology and color theory. Of course, this is all interpretive. Don't take what I'm saying as 100% fact. This is just how I'm choosing to interpret it, and everything based on what I know about the character. And obviously some information is probably subject to change as I'm very early on in the story of Scene0. With that out of the way, let's begin. So, Mabayu Archi color theory analysis. So, when we have a look at Mabayu's color palette, we see a very interesting thing that happens here. So obviously, this isn't super accurate, I kind of just threw this together. But you see there's four main colors to her overall palette. There's green, there's an indigo blue, there's the highlighting color of white and grey, I've kind of mixed that together, and then there's the purple, which is her eyes. The purple takes up a very small part of her character design. It's only in her eyes, her soul gem, and this part of her weapon. The indigo and the white take up a majority of her design, but only in her magical girl form, so I kind of treat that as a lesser part of her design overall. And of course her hair, which is green, takes up a majority of her design in that it persists through both her magical girl form and her regular human form. So yeah, as you can see here, obviously it's a very noisy color palette, I think, in the sense that there's a lot of clashing colors. Now obviously these complement each other, but it's not like, Kyoko's color palette, right, where she has a lot of reds, a lot of whites, a lot of dark brown, a lot of pink in her color palette. They're all around about the same temperature, all around about the same kind of colors in that. Mabayu has a very clear, distinct palette clash with the green and the indigo blue / purple. That's a pretty interesting design choice that I noticed right away. So let's have a look at green. Mabayu's main color motif is green. I highlight this as her main color because it persists through each design she has, and as the brightest color in her palette, it is the easiest to see first. Unlike most of the main characters in the franchise, her hair color does not match her eye color, which implies a sort of disconnect between what she presents as and what she sees, or a disconnect between what we see and who she really is. And as you can see here, like I said, her eye color is purple versus her hair color of being green. This is of particular interest to me because on a standard color wheel, shades of green are completely opposite shades of purple. Mabayu, from her color palette alone, is shown as a character with a clear internal clash that defines her personality. As you can see, this is the color-picked green shade of green from her hair, and it almost directly parallels this kind of indigo purpley blue. The color green is associated with safety. You think of green, you think of nature. Trees, shrubs, thickets, places of shelter, and places to calm down from the outside world. Mabayu is a character who prefers to be inside in a controlled space than outside in the confusing, overwhelming social settings. She seeks comfort and shelter. Green also curiously represents growth and cycles because of its link to nature. But as we know her now, Mabayu is stagnant. That said, clear early signs of growth have begun to show up, and the green in her palette likely represents this. But also, green represents envy. Mabayu is not an outwardly envious person. As we've noted in prior breakdowns, Mabayu is a character who not only internalizes her feelings rather than expresses them, she also has a passivity towards the concept of friendship. She sees Mami hanging out and talking with friends and doesn't act jealous because she has none, she simply wants to have no part of it. That said, over the course of film 1, we see her trying to gravitate towards Mami in the hopes of getting answers to some questions, but she is currently not an envious person. If anything, her quote-unquote sin would be sloth. Green, as I have said before, is the brightest and most persistent colour in her palette, yet seems to represent what will be later stages of her character rather than what she is currently, which makes sense if you consider the symbolism of growth. As an emotionally repressed character, she has to slowly come into her own over the course of the 4 films that we are watching. Where that will leave her is yet to be seen, but we can clearly see the creator's intent by drawing us to the green in her palette. Blue. Mabayu's blue is closer to purple, like indigo. It's again an interesting colour to have in her palette due to its position on a colour wheel against green, her main colour. Blue/indigo only appears in her magical girl outfit, but immediately overtakes the palette, ending up as prominent as green. When compared to other main characters, their magical girl outfit most often will match their hair colour, such as Mami, Sayaka, Kyoko. Blue is associated with a large variety of psychological readings due to how many ways blue shows up in our lives. Typically though, blue represents calmness and structure. Blue can be linked to introversion and inspection, likening the stillness of a body of water to the idea of being able to be alone with your thoughts undisturbed. Blue invokes authority. See how often it appears in military-related uniforms, on arm patches, etc. Instead, authority is linked with making the people around you calm because they are in trustworthy, confident company. Blue, however, also has a multitude of negative traits like sensitivity. It is often seen as a moody colour. Someone who likes blue as a favourite colour, or a character designed with blue, is very emotional, but they internalize those emotions, and said internalizing causes great stress and anxiety. Blue represents order, but on a negative side of that order implies a lack of spontaneity. One may be comfortable with how they currently are, and not want to, or not be able to move on to something else and change. Mabayu is defined by exactly those negative connotations of blue. She is a quiet, introverted girl who keeps to herself and only does what is necessary to survive. She hates the idea of socializing and internalizes all perceived criticisms of her person. She rushes home after her part-time job to find comfort in her tiny compact room rather than wanting to stay outside. She is written in a way that suggests a deep-seated depression that has existed for much of her teenage life, but these things aren't easy for outsiders to spot, which is probably why her blue is closer to indigo. Compare this to Sayaka, whose blue is much stronger and more vivid, and whose emotions are always worn on her sleeve. So overall, we have a few interesting notes to take when we look at Mabayu, right? She's a character who's very introspective, we've gone all over this kind of stuff, and it's interesting to see that these are the takeaways we can get from the colours in her palette. Personally, I think it's a pretty smart colour palette. It's a very unique colour palette, right? When you compare this to the original cast, especially the characters I mentioned, right? All of their colour palettes in their magical girl forms are like uniform, one kind of colour, Madoka, even though she has yellow in her colour palette, it's a pastel yellow, right? It all matches with the pink. Everything is all uniform. Mabayu's suggests nothing of the sort. It's a deliberate clash, right? Her human identity clashing with who she's supposed to be, right? She's a passive girl, but she's also a magical girl, and that means that that passivity can't slide. She has to be active, but it's not something that interests her. So it'll be interesting to see how this clash continues moving forward. Before we move on to the reaction, I also would like to take a little bit of time here to thank you guys for the support on the last two reaction videos. It was very nice to see people interested enough to watch and like and stuff. Hopefully, as I you know, this seems to be a pretty consistent word in the channel vocabulary now, but hopefully the audio will be much better this time. I also kind of record late, so you know, I kind of deliberately speak a bit quieter so that people don't hear and all that stuff, but you know, we'll just we'll have to see how it goes. But yeah, thank you guys for the support. So yeah, with all that out of the way, I think it's time we transition over to the video and get started. Alrighty, so here we are. We are on Scene0 Film 2 Official Madoka Magica prequel, fully voiced English subs. Once again, a thank you to Razielim, or Raz, for allowing me to react, use their content for my reaction and analyses. Make sure to go subscribe and like the video, like the original video. As always, the channel and original video will be left with a link in the description below. And yeah, so first thing I'm noticing is how long, oh my god, how long this next part is. Which, you know, that's kind of worrying, but you know, it is what it is. Last video was an hour and 40 minutes long. I'm hoping this one won't be as long. So I don't know where I'll cut it off, but we will definitely be cutting this video into multiple parts to react to, but yeah. I'll just do a quick audio check of everything first, and then we will begin. Okay, I might turn that down just a little bit. Okay, that seems to be fine. Alright, let's begin. Oh. And of course, you know, just turn down the quality for the recording. Right, so this is picking up right after the last thing, right? And my existence fades. So Mabayu died, and we are back to day one. So I wonder how this goes. So it starts off like film 1. Is this like a ReZero's Natsuki Subaru Return by Death thing? Because she's clearly reacting to being hurt by the witch. But we're back on day 1. Oh man, this is interesting. So she thinks it's a dream. So it is also kind of like Homura, but it's not like she's actively trying to go back in time as far as we can tell. Blood like Boogaloo. Huh. So I really wonder too how this actually works with Homura's time stop, right? Like Mabayu's obviously gone back in time. It's like avoiding death kind of thing. I'm really curious to see what exactly that entails, right? I mean, you have this kind of clash where Mabayu seems to be able to ignore the laws of, like, the rules of Homura's time stop to such a large degree, but then she also seems to be, it's also like her, like, will Homura be able to recognize this, is what I mean, right? Like, when she dies, does she die when Homura resets a timeline, for example, right? Is that why she died? Is it because Homura messed something up and had to go back, and so she went back with her? It's not like a willing participation or anything, right? It's kind of, she was brought along, and so the universe had to find a way to bring her back to the start of the month, maybe? But yeah, so in any case, I guess we just have to see, right? But she does go back to the start of the month, it seems. I guess we'll see. So that also puts into question the first scene of the story, right? Because it all starts with her having a dream of fighting Walpurgisnacht. So she was clearly actually fighting Walpurgisnacht with Mami, Homura, and Madoka, but died, and now is back at the start of a month. How many times has she done that? For 4K ultra real. So that's interesting too, right? We've seen the dream, like, we see her memories get, like, stored as film reel, right? And this kind of feeds back into what I've been talking about her character, and like what she prioritizes as memories is, like, she can memorize the entire plot of a film because it brings her comfort, but doesn't remember smaller unimportant details. So it's interesting that it's like she can remember all of the details of this quote-unquote dream, when we've seen how she stores memories is like as film reel. So it's like it's feeding back into that motif, right? Films give her comfort, so she remembers them easily. It's cool to see that being continued here with this as well, to a lesser degree still, but where did it all come from? That's actually a pretty good question for her to ask too, right? It's like, can I get a therapist? Oh my god. Yeah, you and everybody else in this franchise, man. But that's actually a pretty smart question for her to ask too, right? Like, where did the idea, if that was a dream, where did it come from, right? Because obviously, I choose to believe that our dreams are, like, based on stuff that's happening in our lives, right? Like internal stresses, whatever's around us and all that kind of stuff. So it is interesting for her to ask, what could have happened for me to have dreamed that, right? Is it just from the movies I've been watching? Am I doing something that's making me think of stuff like that? So that's kind of interesting. Maybe she interprets it as a dream. It's like this high action dream is like, I'm getting into so much trouble doing all these kinds of things, right? She sees herself getting into a lot of sticky situations in all these dreams, and they all end up with her dying. Maybe if she further internalizes that and interprets it as a dream, what's going to happen is Mabayu might take that as very negative, and it might cause her to close up even more, right? Because if she follows through on that, if she thinks it's a dream giving her a sign, she might not want to do anything like that again. So this will be interesting, right? Because mommy was very hostile towards her in the at the end of the I guess last timeline. Probably interpreting Mabayu stalking her as like very negative, which, I mean, you know, you look at it from mommy's perspective, right? This weird girl's just stalking you, trying to figure out your whole deal. She obviously knows something about magical girls, and she might be sided with Kyoko, you know, because at this point mommy and Kyoko are not on good terms anymore, stuff like that. So, you know, it's a fair reaction from mommy, but it'll be interesting to see how Mabayu responds to that. Oh, that's interesting. She thinks mommy killed her. That's really interesting that she's interpreting it as this, because I think I incorrectly interpreted the Amy scene from the last reaction as like her having precognitive abilities, right? I pictured it as her being able to see into the future, and that's how she knew Amy was going to get run over, stuff like that. That's probably not what happened there, but it is interesting to see that she herself is thinking that that's what's going on here. Oops. But if you think of it, right, it kind of is, right? If she's lived through a past timeline and then goes back in time, it kind of is precognition in a way. Right? There it is again, exactly what I said. She's storing her memories as film reels, and now she's doing it with specifically what she's calling her dream. But I'll be interested to see if she misremembers her dream. We still never found out what this was about either. It is a lot like Subaru's Return by Death, right? At least later on, when he started realizing what was happening and how he could use it to his advantage. I think of the early Roswell, the early Castle episodes, right? He was in Roswell's mansion, right, getting hunted down by Rem every death. So it's like he kept using Return by Death to figure out exactly how to get around that, you know. I wonder if Mabayu might end up doing something like that, you know, essentially ending her life in order to figure out how to navigate everything here. Right. So that's actually also interesting. Is she going back in time on the same timeline? Or is she also hopping to different timelines with Homura? This kind of implies she's going back in time on the same timeline. So a quick refresher for anyone not familiar with like the Madoka Magica lore. Obviously, you know, Homura will go back in time whenever something goes wrong with preventing Madoka from dying. I can't remember who confirmed it. I want to say it was I want to say it was Gen Urobuchi. It was either him or Akiyuki Shinbo, but one of them I remember had clarified that what it is that Homura does at the end of a failed timeline is not so much go back in time, but discards it and moves on to a different timeline. So it's like branched timeline theory rather than, just jumping back in time. So it's interesting to see here that we're getting the implication that Mabayu is staying on the same timeline, right? Because the time stops happening at the same time on the same day. And there's no way Homura does the exact same thing every time, especially not this version of Homura, right? The Moe Homura. So, I'm very interested to see where this goes. I mean, we know Homura doesn't do the exact same thing every time she goes back. Oh, I'm completely wrong. Never mind, I read that completely wrong. But okay, so the implication is actually that Mabayu is jumping to different timelines with Homura, which is interesting. So somehow Mabayu is obviously linked to Homura, but I wonder how. Well, what the hell do you think's happening here, right? That's interesting, right? Now she's on the phase of like trying to rationalize everything. Yeah, me too. Oh, you know what's gonna be interesting, right? She's gonna have the knowledge of her... She's gonna have the knowledge of like the latte art that she was practicing in the time stop. So I wonder if that's gonna do anything specific, like having this like prerequisite knowledge to do the things that Sakie is like saying, right? Oh, you should do the latte art and stuff. It's like maybe in one of these loops she just does it herself and surprises Sakie. Damn, what's that, like $10? It's not bad. Depending on what she got, I guess. I mean, custom latte art, that's kind of cool. Whoa. I was gonna say, she's definitely gonna Oh man, I mean, I like that little trope, right, where it's like, the character says they can do something and it's treated as a joke, but they actually seriously can. It's a cute little trope. Oh, this is interesting. This is like kind of mirroring Madoka speaking to her mother, right, in I want to say episode 1. Like, what would you do with a wish and all that kind of stuff, and like hearing Junko's response. I'm kind of interested to see what Sakie reacts to. That is a really interesting response. Hang on. she like very quickly cuts off Mabayu to answer that. Huh. There's some knowledge behind that, it feels like. That's interesting, right? That implies a past. That implies a troubled past for Sakie as well, right? Ooh, I like that. I like that a lot. I don't want to jump to the conclusion and say, oh, you know, did Sakie meet Kyubey at some point? But yeah, it's probably something to do with whatever happened to Mabayu's parents, which would have been one of Sakie's siblings, either the mother or the father. But it is an interesting read. Right, the test again. You know what would be interesting too, right, is if I would really like to see this play out in a way where it's like Mabayu is super prepared for everything each loop, but like each loop is just a little bit different, right? Like maybe the questions are different on the test or whatever. It would be really interesting to expand how Homura's timeline hopping shenanigans work. Should have been born clairvoyant. That's good and all, but it's something I think about with this character and like the idea of like being content with such small things and like deferring what's the word, responsibility and stuff, right? Is like part of that to me is like Mabayu has this self-internalized idea of like, if I do something and I fail, people are gonna hate me, but if I do something and I do really well, people are gonna expect me to do more, so she'd rather not do it. I wonder if that's gonna play into this whole thing, right? Where it's like, oh, I know everything and I'm gonna ace this quiz, but then she's gonna be expected to continue acing quizzes. So it might be like, it might be a thing that leads into her, you know, abusing this power, so to speak, right? She might figure out that like, oh, you know, it comes across as a dream, I can reincarnate or whatever, so it might lead to a very self-destructive way of navigating life. I'm kind of worried about that with her.
Mabayu-chan, どうしたの? Aにでも見かけた? あ、いえ、そうじゃないんですけど。サキエさん、あそこに白い猫みたいなの見ませんでした? 白い? 見てないわよ。ですよ。
It's hard not to wonder if the adults have interacted with Kyubey, right? Like the closest that I can think of that we ever get really is Yachio, who it's been a while since I've like consumed anything Magia Record, but I know Yachio is like, I think, an adult, or at least like the oldest magical girl that we have that I know of. So it's always an interesting question to wonder if like the older women in the series have ever come across Kyubey and what that would be like. If I ever get the chance, like, this is a fucking pipe dream thing, but like if I ever get the chance to speak to anybody on the production team of Shaft for this show, like anybody in the Magica Quartet or whatever, I would love to know if they've ever considered doing anything with like a story where Junko has spoken to Kyubey or anything like that, you know. It's always been a topic of conversation in the fandom, and I'd like to know what the creators think about that kind of thing.
おかしいな。予知夢と同じことが起こるなら妙な動物を見るはずなのに。いや、しかし予知夢が当たらない方がいいのか。だってこのままだと私は。こんにちは。いらっしゃいませ。急に出てきてびっくりした。
Yeah, didn't she not show up until...
夢の中でも買いに来てましたよね。
I don't remember if that was day 2 though.
確かレモンケーキとザッハトルテをもらえるかしら。かしこまりました。
Oh, okay, no, it must have been day 2. Alright, I'm overthinking. Oh, right, the time stop happened at the end of the first day, didn't it, in the original run of this timeline? It was, during the night, right? And that's where she got the extra hour to watch TV. Oh, man. And yep, here comes the main conflict, right? Things are coming at her that she can't possibly ignore, and it clashes with her need to be in... It clashes with her need to be internal, be herself, be with her thoughts and everything, right? To be passive. That's the word. This will be interesting, right? Because we know Mabayu's already a magical girl, so I wonder how Kyubey... Oh wait, no, that's probably a memory. That's probably a memory from when she got her magical girl ring. Or like her soul gem. Never mind, I'm just completely wrong. But it does kind of bring up the question, right? Was that a memory? And if it was a memory, then did this all start because Mabayu learned about magical girls and maybe her wish was to learn more about them? It's an interesting thought. I still currently think Mabayu's wish was something along the lines of wanting to forget that she made the contract with Kyubey. Oh, that's another thing, right? Is Mabayu might accidentally reveal Homura's powers to Kyubey at some point, which is probably how her and Homura become rivals, I guess, is the current line of thinking that I have. But, you know, again, that just kind of depends on what Homura thinks about Mabayu in the first place. I mean, there's no way Homura doesn't know who Mabayu is. Like, I can't believe that, not with how Mabayu acts in comparison to Homura's powers. Oh, that's an interesting thought, right? If like Kyubey was nearby, then maybe Mommy was with Kyubey and like tried to telepathically reach out to Mabayu in some way.
キューベイだって。キューベイ、変な名前。でもしかして
I don't think you want to know that.
あなたは魔法少女に詳しいんですか？僕は素質のある人間を見つけて魔法少女の契約をするんだ。契約？その時に一つだけ願い事を叶えてあげられる。それじゃあもしかして私が今あなたと
Ah, but you can't, you're a magical
契
girl.
約をしたら？残念だけどそれは無理だ。どうしてです？だって君はもうすでに魔法少女になっ
But she doesn't know, and then here comes all of the... here comes all of the questions, right? How did she become a magical girl? What was the wish? Why doesn't she remember?
てるじゃないか。
The hell was that? Reasonable reaction. Where's Sakie to not be reacting to all of that as well, I wonder?
教室からつけてきたのは分かっているのよ。一度しか言わないからよく聞いて。私にこれ以上近づかないで。じゃないと私はあなたを殺すわ。
It's so interesting that this is Mommy's reaction to Mabayu, right? Unless Mabayu isn't the only one who was tailing her.
すいません。
It could have been Kyoko also tailing her.
あなたその格好。
Whoa. Whoa.
あなたも魔法少女なのね。
Whoa, what the
いや
fuck?
あの
We didn't... How far back... How long ago is this? Because this wasn't in the previous timeline, obviously.
だったらもう容赦はしないわ。
What? What the fuck, dude? Why is Mommy acting like that? Like, don't get me wrong, I know Mommy isn't a perfect character. Like, she's one of my favorite characters to, like, I guess, analyze from that lens, right? Is like, you know, Mommy is a very flawed character, but like, that's crazy that her reaction here is just to fucking kill Mabayu on sight. What the fuck? Wait, and even more so, then that means Mabayu's reaction about waking up from the dream dying is like she's remembering a timeline that we didn't see, so it kind of, because she said, oh, and Mommy killed me, but we didn't see Mommy kill her. But now, as we can see here, clearly there was some kind of timeline or some kind of like version of that timeline where Mommy did actually kill her. What the fuck? Like, again, it isn't weird to see Mommy act like that, but like, well, I guess it's not weird to see Mommy act hostile, but hostile to such an extent. You know, we have seen Mommy killed before, but like, that was when she was at an extreme end of stress. Hmm.
そうですよ。魔法少女なんて存在するわけがない。まして私が魔法少女。
Ain't that the fucking question? Why would anyone want to become a magical girl in this world?
殺し合いに巻き込まれる。そんな非現実的なことあるわけが。いい加減に現実を認めたらどうかな。 白猫が喋った。ということは私は
But how the hell did you become one?
昨日説明した通り、その のソウルジェムが証拠だよ。
It is kind of similar to Homura in that sense too, right? Because Kyubey was like, she's definitely a magical girl, alright, but I don't remember contracting her. She's an anomaly to me. So it's interesting that Kyubey's kind of had two experiences like this.
いつの間にか持っていた指輪が
And it very clearly shows.
急に
Ooh, that's interesting. Sometimes the Soul Gem, you know, we get some like insights to the character based on like the pattern on the Soul Gem and stuff like that. So I'm just kind of stopping there to see if there was anything I could discern.
わけがわかんないです。昨日はあまりにも衝撃的でふて寝してしまいましたが
Existential whiplash.
私がすでに魔法少女になっていてもおかしくないというか、そうでもないと。
But yeah, the idea of like, you know, Kyubey not knowing the full picture, it's always good to have something like that because it kind of grounds Kyubey not as like a unstoppable threat and all that kind of stuff. Not that Kyubey itself is really an unstoppable threat, but you know, what it represents is the unstoppable threat.
この変な現実に説明がつかない。キューベ、魔法少女ってそもそも何なんですか？もしかしてその魔法少女って
I'm kind of interested to see how Kyubey answers this, right? Because Kyubey's probably seen every type of outcome. Well, has seen plenty of outcomes, right, where magical girls fight each other. I think of the different story, right? That whole story revolves around Mommy being a collaborative person and the idea of that being so foreign to other magical girls who were in Mitaki Horror City at the time.
戦ったりします。君のソウルジェム、よく見ると少し濁っていたのがわか
Wow.
るかい？
Kyubey just dodges that.
そういえば確かに。魔女退治で魔法を使うとソウルジェムに汚れがたまる。
That's... what a sneaky little
魔
shit.
女の落とすグリーフシードがその汚れを落としてくれるんだ。けれどグリーフシードの数は限られている。
Is that the first time we've ever heard something like this, but the number of grief seeds is limited? I mean, we obviously know why the number of grief seeds is limited. Because of, like, you know, magical girls becoming witches, so it all depends on whether or not magical girls turn into witches. But that's interesting, Kyubey's kind of saying that outright. Like that.
だから獲物をめぐって魔法少女がお互いに戦うこともあるみたいだ。グリーフシード。
But like, it is kind of dodging the question still, right? Do magical girls fight each other? And you know, the answer is still yes, right? Because the witches are magical girls.
確か
So he kind of gives
夢の
a
中でもそんな単語を
vague
聞いたような。
non-answer.
おかしいな、マバユ。君の机の中にもグリーフシードがあるじゃない。
What? Why? Wait, how does Kyubey... Oh, I guess Kyubey can sense grief seeds and whatever. Is like... because he absorbs that kind of stuff.
なんですかこれは。私こんなの入れた記憶ないんですけど。キューベ、あなたが勝手に。まさか最初にここに来た時からそこにあったよ。嘘、全然。
That's interesting. So did she bring it with her from a prior timeline, maybe?
記憶が
You know, that's something else I've been wondering. Does Homer hoard grief seeds from other timelines? Is that a thing? I can't remember if that's a thing that's established or not.
ない。
If she isn't, she probably should have been doing that, right? You know, it's, probably would have helped out a lot.
これがあれば君のソウルジェムの濁りが取れる。しばらくは反対だね。 けがわからないです。あなた、本当に私以外には見えないですね。僕が見えるのは魔法少女の素質がある子だけだからね。
That's interesting, right? It makes me wonder if again, it leans back into the idea of Sakie. You know, Kyubei's idea of who has potential to become a magical girl is like very perverse in the sense of like it's based on how emotionally unstable they could become, right? At least that's my viewing of it. It's always been kind of like that. It's kind of been the basis for why I believe somebody like Hitomi has never been targeted and probably never will be targeted because she is fairly mentally strong. So we see Sakie, who like kind of revealed or like hinted at some kind of troubled past. It makes me wonder if maybe she is someone Kyubei might consider potential as a magical girl, you know? I mean, again, there's also the age thing, right? Kyubei seems to prefer preteen or teenage girls for that kind of thing. Well, it could be that, you know, it could also just be that Sakie was lying.
あれは夢の中の出来事でしたっけ？もう頭がこんがらがる。君は昨日からよく夢の話をしているね。何のことか少し詳しく聞かせてくれないかな。
Sneaky little shit.
ですね。正夢というか予知夢というか、私これとよく似た時間を過ごしたような記憶があって、それに時々時間が止まるんです。操ったりはできないんですけど、急に動きが止まったり進んだり。これって魔法なんですかね？興味深いね。魔法の性質は魔法少女によって違うんだ。断言はできないけれど可能性は十分にあるね。なるほど。
Right, that makes sense. You know, Kyubei has no idea how
Mabayu,
Homer's magic works. What in the Final Fantasy VII live stream, bro?
それは私はあなたを殺すわ。
Oh, that'll be interesting, right? You know, Kyubei has a very different perception on Mami.
私、夢の中で巴マミに殺されかけたんです。その時は意味がわからなかったけど、今なら想像がつきます。私、魔法少女だってことが彼女にバレたんだって。だから彼女に命を狙われたんだって。
But that's not Mommy. That's not how Mommy reacts. Oh, you know what? I bet it's like Homura. Maybe Homura fed something to her. But then no, because this is the Moe Homura timeline still, so it couldn't have been.
なるほど。君は随分用心深い性格なんだね。昔、石橋を叩いて壊すタイプと呼ばれたこと。
Yep. Whoa, whoops. But yep, exactly, right? Mabayu is a very cautious person to the point where it doesn't matter if it like ends up hurting her. She'll do anything to protect herself, kind of like thing, or like protect herself from certain situations. So yep, definitely that.
しかし、参りましたね。まさか自分があの戦いの当事者になってしまうだなんて。
I don't know how to find similar situation to
命がいくらあったって足りませんよ。願いを叶えてもらった記憶もないですし。
Man, I really do hope her wish is something to do with wishing to forget she made a wish. But then there's like the context of that, right? We need context leading up to that for it to work.
マバユは魔法の使い方を覚えていないのかい？何度か時間停止を願ってみたりもしたんですが、全然うまくいかなくて。そうだったのか。そもそも君はこの世界で数少ないイレギュラーだ。
Irregular.
イレギュラー？君の魔法少女の契約は記憶されていない。いつ、どこで、どうやって契約したのかがわからないんだ。本来ならありえないことだよ。願いの内容がわかれば魔法の傾向も想像がつくんだけれども、当てずっぽうに君の能力を探っていくしかないかもね。
Trial and error. Man, I can't fucking imagine how annoying that would have to be.
魔法少女の戦いに巻き込まれるかもしれないなら、せめて自分の身くらいは守れ。
That's also interesting that she's coming into this with the mindset that it's going to be hostile, right? It kind of leads into like it's interesting that her first reaction is that it must absolutely be hostile, and there can't have been any other context for how Mami was reacting and stuff like that. Granted, she did only see Mami aggressive when she was in her magical form, so you know. And then of course there's Kyoko.
何か試してみようか。教室の窓の外にビルが見えるね。あ、はい。視覚に意識を集中して心の中でイメージするんだ。
What the fuck?
まず視界を縦横の線で9のブロックに分割する。
How the fuck?
真ん中のブロックに集中して四角にどんどん近寄って。あれ
So Cubase does
ブロックが視界いっぱいに広がったらまた9分割。その真ん中のブロックに集中してさらに近寄ると、すごい。
What the fuck?
拡大してめちゃくちゃ大きく見えます。ビルの中、窓の向こうで会議をしている人も
Huh?
はっきり。
How?
思ったとおり
Just as you thought. You thought.
だね。
Yeah, right.
どうも君は光に関係する魔法の素質があるみたいだ。
Manipulating light? That's interesting. Oh my god, we gotta take a note of that, huh? So her magic is something to do with light manipulation. That's interesting. That's real interesting. So Mabayu's magic is light manipulation? Question mark. That's... Huh. That has some... So she could do like illusions and stuff maybe, you know, using like bending light and stuff. Huh.
この方面を探っていけば契約の秘密もきっと。もしかしてこの力があればカンニングもし放題なのでは。
Of course she thinks of it like that, right? Of course she thinks of it like that. She thinks of what is the easy... She thinks of a way to apply her magic to being able to coast through life super easy. Right, I mean, we go ahead and look at the notes here, right? We see one of the notes I saved is she only puts in the bare minimum. Mabayu doesn't seem to be able to put in more effort than what is necessary to survive and get through the day. Her attitude towards schoolwork and daily social routines is reactive and not proactive, right? So it makes sense that we have her do something like this where it's like she only wants to do the bare minimum and not want to do in any more than what is absolutely necessary, you know. It's very telling that this is her first thought for something like this. But right, let's continue.
一応言っておくけど、魔法の使いすぎは禁物だよ。
Right, see, even if it's going to hurt her.
そうなんですか。言っただろ。
She's kind of oblivious, in a way, to things harming her negatively.
魔法を使うとソウルジェムが濁る。補助的な魔法だけじゃ魔女を倒すことは難しい。魔女を倒せなければ、汚れを取るグリーフシードは手に
That's
入
probably
らない。
worth noting too, right? That it's considered
なるほど、そういう理屈ですか。
support magic.
わかりました。カンニングはここぞという時に限ります。
Understood. Only use it when necessary.
魔法、私も魔法を使えるなんて。しかも光の魔法。なんだかかっこいい。
What does that even mean, though?
私の性格的には闇の魔法がお似合いっぽい気もしますが、いやでも光と闇は表裏一体。修行をすれば私もいつか。
Well, it's interesting you say that, right? Because obviously you have Homura, who is, oh my god. I think it just clocked. Okay, let's go back over to the notes so I can, kind of write this in real time. So, Homura is defined by a dark / black color palette. Clearly, will rival Mabayu in some way. Mabayu says, what is light without the dark / without a shadow? Implication is that the darkness to Mabayu's light is in fact Homura. Black holes are defined by having a gravitational pull so strong that light can't escape. In this example, Homura characterized by a black color palette is the black hole. Mabayu, light magic user, is the light that can't escape the black hole. This might be what inspired Mabayu's abnormal ability to move through Homura's time stop. The relationship between light and black holes. Maybe not, maybe so, but you know, I figured I would note that down just because it was like on the mind and stuff, but yeah.
Mabayu, 君はそんな格好で何をしているんだい？何って、家事手伝いですよ。 アルバイトではなく？何言ってるんですか。私はまだ中学生ですよ。アルバイトなんてできるわけないじゃないですか。保護者の早紀江さんのお店
That's really funny to say to Kyubey of all people.
のお手伝いをしてるだけです。早紀江は母親ではないのかい？あなた、ズキズキと聞きにくいことを聞いてきますね。私の本当の母親
Yeah,
は死に
figured,
ました。
right? That makes sense.
いわゆる不治の病ってやつです。
Incurable disease.
父親もいなくて、
My dad
代
wasn't
わりに
around,
私
so
の面倒
Sakie
を見
took
て
me
くれ
in.
たのが
Okay.
早紀江さん。
We'd better go ahead and, we probably want to go ahead and note that as well, right? You know, for next time. Mabayu's mother of an incurable disease. Her father was absent. Sakie adopted her after her mother's death. Makes sense. I mean, you know, we probably could have guessed that, but it's good to have the confirmation.
感謝してますし、お手伝いくらいいくらでもやります。
Huh.
車が暴走して突っ込んでくる。
That's interesting. She seems to react to specific memories.
エイミーが引かれちゃう。
But this isn't her. I guess this could be her. I guess it could be like, her powers doing this, right? She was able to focus in, kind of zooming in on something, manipulating light, so I guess it could be that. But it does read more as precognition.
どうしたんだい、マバユ。そういえば、確かこの後。
Although it's clearly also memories of the prior timeline bleeding in.
マバユちゃん、どうしたの？すっかり忘れてた。もしもあれが予知夢なら。
So is it going to happen again?
ダメ、間に合わない。
Oh, that's interesting. That's real interesting. Maybe Mabayu interrupts and prevents Madoka from becoming a magical girl? Which would definitely get the attention of Homura.
また引かれちゃう。もしも私が本当に魔法少女なら、お願い、時間よ、止まって。
Interesting. That's definitely going to be something that happens in the future, though, I'm sure.
チムが現実に。そしてまたしても時間停止の魔法は使えなかった。やっぱり私は時間の流れに翻弄されるだけ。
Just being swept along, that's another interesting character note, right? Is like Mabayu definitely goes with the flow with things, right, as a passive character, so that's interesting.
ということでマバユちゃん、店番お願いね。わかりました。ここまでの展開も夢で見たのと同じですか。ねえキューベ。キューベ。
Right, Kyubei's not here because of Madoka.
もしかして。私もがっかりしちゃって外でぼーっとしてたんだけどね。その後急に奇跡が起こったの。エイミーの心臓が動き出して助かったのよ。助かった。ええ、お医者さんもこんなの初めてだってびっくりしてたわ。神様のご褒美かもしれないわね。
Well,
ええ、
kinda.
そうかもしれませんね。嘘です。多分違います。
Yeah.
要まどかさんは魔法少女。
Man, she's
事故の後
fucking good
キュ
at
ーベが
this.
消えてエイミーに奇跡が起きた。これってつまり要さんが契約をしてエイミーの命を。
That's another thing I keep noting, right? You know,
多分
Mabayu's a very intelligent girl. It's good to see her solving these kinds of things in real time. Okay, I'm looking at the recording. We are sitting at a little over an hour, so I think this is probably a good spot to pause for the time being, and we'll come back with another part to this. So yeah. Once again, you know, a huge thanks, of course, to Raz for allowing me to continue to use their videos for my reactions and analysis. As always, the link to the original video and to their channel will be in the description. Please make sure to subscribe to their video, to their channel, and like the original video. And you know, also drop a comment. Help them out with the algorithm and stuff. It's not my original content, all that. But yeah, in terms of my content now, if you are liking the series, if you're liking my reaction, my analysis, my breakdown and stuff, show some love, drop a like, subscribe, comment, tell me your thoughts on Mabayu, on the story so far, and yeah, I guess I'll see you guys in the next part. Thanks for watching.